Welcome in, and this is the Legacy Right. I am the legacy of Jennifer and Kaiser. I am Zachary Kaiser, your captain. Engage. That's Andrew Joseph. We have yet another special guest. We're following the campaign trail again. So we had Mike Kermat on a few months ago. We're following out again. This time we have Chase Oliver on to give his perspective and maybe tell us a little bit of how hard the campaign trail really is, just being away from home. So and some more. But before that, I got to do the plug, Andrew.
Yeah.
So yeah, so real quick, short, to the point, fanghornforesters.com for all your woodworking needs and necessities. Uh, just head on over to fanghornforesters.com and try to get yourself a coaster or a knife cutting board or anything custom. My cousin is willing to do anything, and he just got a laser engraver, so he can engrave some things on your bowl that you want. So go check out fanghornforesters.com and let's get to the show. So how's everybody doing this morning? This
Not
Tuesday
bad.
morning?
I'm doing fantastic myself. And thanks for having me on, you guys.
Oh, well, thank you for coming on, good sir, especially with your busy schedule, of course. So, speaking of your busy schedule, what is a day-to-day itinerary for the most part to running a busy life scheme like running for
Well,
president?
days when I'm home like this, I typically carve out for doing media, just like we're doing right now, podcasts and radio shows, things I can do from my own home. But usually I'm on the road 4 to 5 days a week,
Hmm.
traveling around. So I just got back from a relatively easy swing of 3 days. But I see a 7 day trip on the horizon coming up where I'll be in 5 different states throughout that process.
Mm.
Uh,
Oh,
and and so yeah, sometimes you're just constantly busy, constantly moving. But even on days like this when I'm at home, I am constantly doing something, either on the phone with donors and supporters, or speaking to folks just like yourself, so your listeners can kind of hear the message of the campaign and the message of liberty and what we're trying to bring to the table.
mm. Excellent. I mean, that's what it's about is the message. I mean, so thank you for coming aboard here on our little small up and coming podcast, but yeah, that sounds like it's just never ending, really. So I mean, it sounds like it's just a lot of phone calls, honestly, when it comes down to it.
The phone calls are the least favorite part, but yeah, it is kind of like constantly running on a treadmill. It's like a marathon that never ends. But
Hmm.
I just kind of jumped into this right after running for Senate. So like I didn't even stop running from Senate. Like I basically a month later was starting to run for president. So I figure if I just keep
Hmm.
pedaling the bike or whatever and don't stop, I'll be good. But as soon as I give myself a break, then I'm gonna be in trouble. So I just got to keep moving through November.
You got something to say, Andrew?
Well, I was just gonna ask like how long are you running every day? Is it like 15, 16 hours or what? Some of those travel days are like 15-hour days. Like, you got to wake up at like 5 a.m. to catch an early flight and then get through TSA and then you got your layovers. And so sometimes just traveling to a place can take, 9 hours out of your day. And then you still have to go out there, throw your suit on and do a meet and greet at the end of the day, check into your hotel at midnight, and then wake up and do it all over again. But you know what? I actually enjoy doing that. It is my full
Hmm.
gig right now. I left full-time work and am using, life savings, and I have a small little bit of work that I do remotely online to get me a little bit of money to buy food and stuff. But other than that, I'm constantly running for president. And it's been an amazing experience because even with those long days, you meet amazing people and you hear their stories. You see what some amazing libertarians are doing to make the world a better place, free from the state. And so, like, I'm energized as tired as I can get, it's actually energizing to see amazing libertarians doing work in their communities, hearing their stories, and then taking that with you and sending it outward.
No, I know it's the libertarian ticket, but with the messaging, how do how do you go and try to gravitate towards more than just libertarians? So, like, if you were to get the nomination, how are you going to be able to take that concept from the left or that concept from the right? I hate using that jargon, but that's just the world we live in
Hmm.
order to bring out the message and get the votes you need for the bigger picture.
Yeah, well, I got a lot of practice of this, particularly when I was in Iowa at the state fair, because I was on the ground for 4 days in a row. And not everybody who comes to your booth is a libertarian. There's a lot of
Hmm.
Democrats and Republicans and just regular people. And especially with families, I would communicate it this way. If I would see like a parent with their kids, I would say, I bet you have unconditional love for your kid, don't you? And they would go, yeah, I would do anything for my
Hmm.
kid. I'd die for my kid if I had to. And that's a very common sentiment. That's unconditional
Yeah.
love. And so I say, you have unconditional love for your child. You're going to want to see them succeed, survive, and thrive in this world. You're going to be their best advocate. So why do we take power out of your hands and put it in the hands of bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. or in Des Moines and your state house? Why are we giving them the power? They don't know your kid. They don't know your family. They don't know your community, but you do.
Yeah.
So let's remove the agency from those people and return it back to you to determine your kid's education or their health
Hmm.
care or anything else about them. And even better, when you're an adult, you can actually govern yourself. So let's return power away from them and give it directly to you to affect your own life, your own family, and your own community. That across the board, left, right, and center. Like people go, hey, that makes a lot of sense. And from
Hmm.
there, you usually start the conversation with saying, okay, so that's kind of our concept is taking power out of their hands and giving it to you. What is important to you? And then you relate it back to liberty because that's how I became a libertarian.
Hmm.
I was an anti-war Democrat until Obama got elected and he wasn't anti-war. And then
Hmm.
that had me finding the Libertarian Party at a festival. And the guy who brought me in the party, he asked me what was the most important thing to me. And I said it was being anti-war. And he said, "Welcome home. You need to come in here and sit in this tent and talk with us for a little while, and we're going to connect your anti-war view with the greater philosophy of liberty." And that's what I want to do with so many disaffected Americans, because there are a lot of people, I say, everyone is sick and tired of being sick and tired. And whatever their issue is, liberty can be the answer. We just have to connect them to that greater philosophy of liberty, peace, nonviolence, being able to live amongst one another, even if we live differently, live and let live. These are concepts that are pretty easy to get across if we can only listen to what the voter is concerned about and bring them in through that issue.
Yeah, that's probably the best message I can always agree on because I mean it comes to choice and responsibility and that's just what people just want their own they want to have their own responsibility. They want to raise their family the way that they want to raise their family. They want to choose the best education for their child. I mean, whether regardless of whether it's in a school or at home or not in school, maybe they just want to farm. I don't who knows. Maybe it was generation after generation in eighth grade education and then it was back to work on the in the fields. So I mean, and that's what it seems like in today's day and age is we've lost that. Maybe it's because we've gotten so comfortable. But yeah, I mean, the old saying is, comfortable times creates, or yeah, what is it? Strong men create comfortable times and comfortable times create weak men. And maybe we just become so weak that we forgot that, hey, we can do more.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of that is, you know, I don't know with weak men or weak times, but what I see is we have a weak government. We have a government that is constantly, trying to create problems and find solutions to problems that don't really exist, or the problems that
mhm,
could be better served without them. They try to make themselves seem like, oh, well, without government, like, what would we even do? But I see people every day doing great things without government being involved. They don't wait for some department of whatever to do something. They just get out there and they do it, whether it's,
mhm,
so I walk half a mile with my dog when I take her for a walk to my church and back. And I noticed there was a lot of litter on the road. So I started picking up a Home Depot bucket and just like throwing litter in as I walked. And a few weeks later, I noticed one day when I was walking the dog that I saw a father and his daughter walking on the other side of the road, and they had a bucket in their hands and they were picking up litter. And it's
mhm,
because they see doing it and see, like,
Yeah.
we didn't need government to do that. That was just people
mhm.
doing good. And there's a lot of spontaneous good that would exist. And particularly, we'd be able to do a lot more good if government would quit taxing us to death.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with that because I'm in my aunt's neighborhood. Same similar fashion as the litter thing. just recently some drama unfolded because a landlord just bought a new rental property, new owner, went tit for tat with the tenant, chopped down some trees along the side, but it wasn't their lot. It was actually city lot, and city got so a lot of drama. So like my aunt ended up stepping in and saying, well, let's just go plant some trees and like put it and then seed some clover for some better drainage since it's all barren now. So I mean, I did the same thing. Yeah, like yesterday afternoon, I went over there and helped her plant like three cedar trees just to get started. So I mean,
Fantastic, man.
yeah, little things like that. I mean, I agree. Like we can do little things without government intervention or giving away our billfold or anything. So I no, I definitely agree.
It's the little things that build momentum to do
Oh
great
yeah.
things.
Mm-mm.
Well,
So
there's a great story out there about a guy who, there was I love using this story. There was like a senior center, and there was like a hill that they were having to climb over. And so this guy, he said, "Oh, I'll just build some steps." And he went and built some steps for them. And then the state tore the steps down because they said, "Oh, well, it wasn't safety regulated, and it wasn't this, that.
mhm.
It's clearly better than climb up the hill." And they said, "Well, we'll build some steps." And of course, it cost, hundreds of thousands of dollars for the state to build it. It cost this guy $500 and a trip to Home Depot,
Yeah.
to get
Mhm.
it done. And it just explains the
Yeah.
difference between people doing good in the world and the cost of government trying to do good in the world are just vastly different. And we could utilize those resources in so much of a better way. My grandfather used to tell me, government will tax you $1 and they'll give you a dime. And like that's always how I viewed the way government works is they take money out of our wallet and they misuse it so badly. They
Mhm.
mismanage it, and of course, it has to fall through all the middlemen and wish wash through the process. And by the time it comes back to you, it's not even worth nearly what was taken from you. And so
Mhm.
that's one of the reasons I am a libertarian because I see direct and mutual aid just being so much more effective in our communities.
And on the libertarian approach, because we've seen the disaster of government in charge of well everything, but what would be the best transition, say with education, as an example? What would be the best transition for the normies, the non-libertarians, to get in fold um, to kind of get away from that government intervention?
Yeah. So I talk about education an awful lot. Now, as
Hmm.
president, if I were elected, I would, you know, uh, seek to remove the Department of Education altogether and we're just return that back to the states. And what we're seeing in
Hmm.
states all over the country right now is this interesting experiment of instead of having the traditional public school model where they're funding education based on the zip code and it goes to a county school system that then gets parsed out, we're seeing a lot of states doing funding students and not systems, where if there is going to be
Hmm.
tax money taken, it's now going directly to the parents to determine where they want their kids to go to school. Now, I think it's not the perfect libertarian solution, but it's far better than what we've been seeing. And with
Hmm.
that, like in Atlanta, where I'm from, the Atlanta city schools are terrible. If you're a public school parent in Atlanta and you see that the schools were so bad that they had to cheat to get test scores up, like they literally a criminal conspiracy, like teachers and administrators were arrested for like lying and
Hmm.
cheating on tests to get federal funding.
Hmm.
If your schools are that bad, you want options. You want an alternative. You want an educational entrepreneur to pop up in your region to say, "Hey, we teach it this way, we teach it that way." And the way you break that through to the non-libertarian is you say, we want you to have agency for where your child wants to go to school. Let's say your child's a brilliant engineer. Now, maybe they want to go to a STEM school that's gonna help curate that. Maybe your child
Hmm.
is a brilliant artist or a performer. They want to go to a performing arts school so they can learn how to hone their craft and do well in that field. Maybe your kid wants to be a farmer one day, and there can be apprenticeship program that allows them to take some of their school day and go and work on a farm and learn the practical part of the business of farming too. Not just
Hmm.
not just the work of farming, but also how to run a farm. Like these are the
Hmm.
lessons that you would want to teach a kid in a rural community whose family maybe been in that industry for a long time. And so we want to give parents that option. And then also, this is the part that doesn't get talked about. We always talk about parents and students. We don't talk often enough about educators. There's a lot of great teachers out there I know some of them who they became teachers because they had an awesome teacher growing up, and they go to school and they get in
Hmm.
the public school program and they go, "Oh my God, the regulation here is so terrible. Like, how does anybody teach anybody around here with this curriculum? I could teach it better if I did this, or if I did that, or if
Hmm.
we taught this way, or if we read this book." But they don't have the freedom to do that in the public school model. But with an education-free marketplace, those educators can actually form schools of their own or work within schools that teach a different way and find a better way to create critical thinkers and lifelong learners, which is what we want our kids to be. We want them to always be learning. We want them to always be skeptical of just
Hmm.
hearing something and not getting to as to why that exists or where it's coming from. That's the kind of critical thinking we need in the next generation, or else with AI and other technology looming, it's going to be really hard to parse out what's real and what's fake. And we need to make sure that
Hmm.
our kids have the tools to know those things.
And that's a great transition right there. What are your thoughts on AI, and what are the benefits to your perspective, and what are the negatives?
Well, I do think the benefits outweigh the negatives. Just like with
Hmm.
any new emergent technology, there's always fear around it. Uh, at one point, somebody said, if we access this new technology, people will have too much information, they'll have too many ideas in their head, and it'll be harder to control things and keep things under
Hmm.
control. That was the criticism given to the printing press when they said, "Oh my God, people are just gonna be
Hmm.
able to read whatever they want." And similarly, anytime we expand our ability to communicate, the internet was the same way. Like, oh my God, it's going to lead to the downfall of whatever. People were scared of, the onset of the internet because, oh, we'll just all be plugged into our computers and we'll never see each other in the real world. I
Hmm.
think many of those fears are unfounded or exaggerated, right? Same with AI. I don't think AI right now is Skynet. I don't think we're going to lead to Terminator 2 anytime soon.
Hmm.
But I do see the massive benefits in being able to simplify a lot of work. We're already seeing tons of industries doing this. In fact, my own campaign, our communication staff, we can take things, we can take, hey, we have a speech that Chase gave that's like 15 paragraphs long. We need to sum it up into a paragraph, take the best parts out, and we can, you can do that using predictive language
Hmm.
for something like a handout, like for a piece of literature you would hand out. Or that happens a lot in different applications, marketing and PR, just in the corporate world, be able to do that kind of stuff. So I see way more benefits than fears. And I think the worst thing we can do is insist that governments start regulating AI out of those fears, because I'll tell you the one worst thing that will be is if there's a government regulated AI, because that's an AI that, just like government, will
Hmm.
not care about your privacy. They will not care about the truth. They will care about crafting narratives, and they will care about, continuing the existence of the state through propaganda. So, like, I don't want an AI that has that as its brain. I would much rather have a free market of AI that's not
Hmm.
government regulated.
Hmm.
Yeah, same. I mean, and no different with anything with regulation. I mean, anytime the government touches anything, it kind of goes to shit. So, like Andrew's favorite concept, crypto. So, I
Yeah.
mean, they're trying to regulate that. So,
Avoid
I don't.
CBDCs, baby. We hate
Yeah.
Yeah.
CBDCs. Every fiber of my being, I will fight CBDCs.
Hmm.
And if I'm a candidate for
Hmm.
president, you will hear me saying that quite often.
Well, interesting though, and I read this somewhere. Maybe I watched it. I don't know. Or maybe it was a podcast somebody was going over. But I guess the I forget his name. I don't really care. The chairman of the Federal Reserve,
Jerome Powell.
we I Jerome Powell. I think
Thank
he
you.
mentioned something that the United States is not ready for CBDCs, or I don't know how true that is, but I mean, when the chairman, and if he actually said that, could it just be some psyop, or what does he
Maybe
mean
bought
by
us a little
that?
at a time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, but still, I mean, they don't, in my opinion, I don't think they necessarily need a central bank digital currency right now. I think with the
Never. We
rise of
never need one.
Bitcoin, no, no, but I think they've been starting to use Bitcoin as the new transition, it looks like. That's why, and Andrew would confer with me, like we like the forks. So, and the
Yeah.
privacy coins like Monero and Bitcoin Cash and all that, but the real Bitcoin. But what are your thoughts on maybe Bitcoin being utilized and kind of manipulated with the blockchain to
Well,
be that new?
I don't know about the manipulation of it. What I do say is I do generally separate, the idea that we can get our monetary policy back to two things. A, I would like to see our
Hmm.
dollar get back to tied to something that is finite, whether it's gold or silver, or I tell people
Hmm.
saffron if you want to do that, like whatever. Just find something that is like finite and has some sort of
Hmm.
intrinsic value to tie our money to. And then I would like to see a separation ultimately of capital from the state. And you do this
Hmm.
through cryptocurrencies or through currencies that are not state regulated. And it seems that crypto is like the 21st century equivalent of this. And so
Hmm.
I would support this. And I would tell people that part of diversifying your portfolio is separating your money from any state. Because when you do that, you're able to, travel that capital freely. And, I've seen Bitcoin and being used as means to basically help people who are fighting for freedom around the world, in terms of like fighting for like liberal values like freedom of speech and free expression in areas with brutal authoritarian governments. And they're being able to get funding through Bitcoin and not having to see their money go through the state. It's kind of nice that how that happens.
Hmm.
And so, I think there's limitless potential in separating our money from a state, because when we do that, it gives us the ultimate financial freedom. And it's something that I think should be encouraged. But you're right. We need to avoid government manipulation into these things.
Hmm.
Not like government to start regulating Bitcoin a whole bunch or trying to stick its hands into the idea of it. Because you're right. That's just one step away from a CBDC, right? Just having
Yeah.
government exert its pressure upon these firms and upon these currencies. But again, I'm generally in support of anything that can remove our value and remove our money away from the state being able to have control and sovereignty over it. Because free people are peaceful people generally, and when we're not free, when we're being controlled by a government, that we insist on using the force of government to get our way. And I think it's better just to insist on not using the force.
I mean, if you kind of go back to that Wild West days between Andrew Jackson's ending of the second bank to uh, Lincoln finally signing the National Bank Act. I mean, you had that wildcat period where like banks had, and even after, even like through the late 19th century, post Civil War, you had that period where banks had their own currencies pretty much, but it reflected off the value of whatever gold or silver, mostly gold deposits that were in their actual cellar doors, like in their vaults, and they had to be kind of more discreet, more transparent, more honest with how they assessed what certificates they were giving out. I mean, otherwise they'd go out of business. So, so
Yeah,
you
well,
think
I
that?
think, and I think having competing currencies isn't a bad thing. So
Mhm.
you're right.
I mean, there's always, I mean, you said this like with AI, like there's always pros and cons with anything, but benefits typically always outweigh the negatives. 'Cause, I mean, anything can be negative, but you can always find something that you can innovate, make better, create it to where you can actually have a full use where it's not harming anybody. But I mean, there's going to be some iffy material, so like government. So
Well, it's all better than fiat. So like that's the thing. We
hmm.
got we got room to improve. So that's the most important part.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Fiat
So
makes
th
it.
oh,
Sorry.
go ahead, Andrew.
I was going to say fiat makes it so it's impossible for them to be transparent because they keep, borrowing against the future, right? So that they don't have to be transparent.
Yep, they just print it out of thin air and say, "Oh, it exists now." And at the
Hmm.
devaluation of our dollar and at the risk of ruining the economy for our kids and grandkids, it's what I'm fighting against right now. I have 7 nephews and nieces. I want to make sure they live in a world where they can continue to
Mm.
have economic prosperity and the possibility to start their own business or get a great job. Like these are the things that won't exist if we continue to debt and deficit spend. And we just saw a new like a $7 trillion budget come out of Joe Biden, his proposed budget for this year. It's full of all kinds of wish
Hmm.
lists and giveaways and goodies for, different pet projects. And the truth is, we just can't afford these things. Like, even if they were
Hmm.
constitutional, like, even if the federal government were empowered to do all these things that they don't really have the power to do, we just can't afford it. And we have to be realistic with the
No.
American people that like we have been running up the credit card for literally of the boomers existence, all of Gen X existence, now all of the millennials, now that we're growing up and we're almost 40 years old, us millennials. And so like if we don't stop this, Gen Z and Gen Alpha are screwed like big time. And it's going to be all of our faults. Because we're like on a train that is just like careening towards the cliff. And it's like our parents and grandparents have been like, brakes? What brakes? We don't need any brakes.
I got
And
a
so now
credit card.
desperately our generation is trying to pull that lever and hope that we can stop it in time. And that's why I'm running. Like that's why I'm not waiting to run. I'm 30, I'll be 39 on election day. And people go, why don't you wait like 10 or 12 years? And I don't got time. Like we don't have time. Our generation needs to rise up now and demand a better existence than what we've been given from the previous generations. And it's going to take a millennial voice, I think, to contrast ourselves with the old fogies of Joe Biden and Donald Trump to really put a different face. Like you put the three of us, even you throw Robert Kennedy in that mix, who's over, he's 70, put the four of us on a debate stage. One of us doesn't look like the other. And that's for good reason, because one of us isn't the old 20th century politics. We want a new politics of freedom for the 21st century. And that's what I'm trying to put forward to the voters. That's why I want to be our nominee, because I think when we do that, when we embrace the Gen Z voter, our party will grow. Our foundation will grow over the next 10 to 15 years, because Gen Z over the next 10 to 15 years will grow into the largest voting bloc in this country. And so we need to communicate that message to them right now, that they're being screwed over by our parents and grandparents who are continuing to spend us to oblivion, and ask for sanity. And I think if we put that on a ticket, we stand to gain in 2024 and really build our party up while we tear the state down. And that's what I want to do. And I hope those of you who are listening out there are excited for that kind of message, because God knows I am. It's why I we started this talking about 16-hour days and stuff. That's why I do this, is because I know our message is great. And if we can just get it out there in front of enough people, we can shatter the expectations of the two-party system.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where it comes down to it. I mean, we just need younger faces out there, younger leaders out there that just sit in anything. It can be politics. I mean, I'm an anarchist, but hey, if you got to be use self-defense and jump in there politically, I mean, leaders, we need a youthful leadership. I mean, politics, economics. I mean, you name it, education, you name it, technology. This geriocracy that we've kind of allowed to unfold all these years. I mean, it needs to end.
Let me say
So, I mean,
this about anarchists in government, sir. I know an anarchist sheriff. If you ever wanted to meet somebody who's totally based, meet an anarchist sheriff. He's actually the sheriff of Nogales, Arizona. And he is an anarchist who lives on the border, who's like, F this wall. Like, this is bullshit, because people should be able to just freely have commerce over here. And like, so there are anarchists in government, and there's some of the most based people, because he says, I don't even believe this office should exist, but if I'm not in it, some statist will be, who will be stealing people's rights. And so at least I can administer the bare minimum in a way that's transparent, which is the job I hate, but I prefer doing it over letting somebody else do it who's going to abuse it. So he's like, philosophically, I hate what I do, kind of, but also like if I got to do it, I got to do it. And he does it really well, to the point where he gets reelected. The public trusts him to do it really well. And so, even anarchists, who don't believe in a state, which I'm a minarchist, and let's be real, we are allies for the longest time. We have so much state to remove before you and I are ever competing with each other, right, in terms of ideology, that we should just be on the same side together right now, tearing the state down. But until we get to that point, and when we get to that point, we'll both be like 80 years old, and that's being optimistic, right? That we'll both still be alive by the time we get to the point where we're minarchy versus anarchy.
Yeah.
Well, by that time, I'll be the 80-year-old that's selling weeds in the back alley, competing
our elder
against
years
the
are gonna be so awesome.
Yeah. Competing against the pharmaceutical companies, selling to a bunch of boomer millennials. Here, let's
Right.
So, but no, that's fantastic, the messaging. And what's your thoughts on, because I know it's always dragged out and said the speaking of status and the two-party system, they always come about this time every 4 years or every two, realistically, because the midterm. It's always this is the most important election. Is this the most important election? Are we actually finally at the real
It's the
potential of it?
it's the one where I'm running for president, so of course it's the most important election. No, that is something they do always say. They always try to throw that at us, right? This is you
Hmm.
can't vote Libertarian. It's the most important election. You'll spoil the election. That's what they always say. They call us spoilers, right? Here's my message to anybody that's going to call a Libertarian a spoiler. We are not spoilers.
Hmm.
We are participating in a system that allows us to have a voice and a vote. And if we can get over the stupid ballot access hurdles, we have a candidate we want to vote for. The
Yeah.
Hmm.
only reason an election gets spoiled is because we have plurality voting in this country that allows people with under 50% of the vote to get elected. And if we had ranked choice voting or approval voting, any other thing beyond plurality voting, there would be no spoiling. But guess who cannot give you those elections? Me, a libertarian who's unelected. Who can give it to
Hmm.
you? The Republicans and Democrats that exist in your state house and in
Hmm.
Congress. They could give you a better way to vote, but they don't do it. Why? Because they're very happy spoiling your election and spoiling your vote for the purposes of
Hmm.
maintaining their power. And that should outrage you. Even if you're a Democrat or Republican, it should outrage you that the people in power are so ready to spoil your elections for the purposes of them maintaining their grips on power. We libertarians are not spoilers. Republican and Democratic politicians are the spoilers. They are spoiling it every time. And let's be real, libertarians couldn't spoil it if we wanted to, because you can't spoil something that's already rotten to the core. And that's the two-party
Hmm.
system as it currently exists. And so when anybody tells you you're a spoiler, you turn it right back on them and right back on the people they've been voting for their entire lives, who continue to spoil the political process at the expense of the American voter. That's the message we need to get out to each and every American voter, that our democracy is in danger. But it's not like Joe Biden says, where it's, oh, democracy is at risk because people aren't voting for me. Democracy is
Hmm.
at risk because we've been limited to two choices our entire lives.
Yeah, and right now it's going to be Joe Biden, Donald Trump. That's part two. So that's the sad part about the duopoly is you don't have that aspect of choice. But I'm not going to say like it could be worse. We could have all these choices, say in like the UK where they have a multi-party system, but it still comes down to that conservative liberal like caucus. So I mean, it's like we're stuck in this concept that you have to be this or that, right, left. I mean, you can't just be you. You can't just
Yeah.
choose your own values, be your and live for you, have your own responsibility, and participate in a system where you can actually provide your say so along with other people that have provide their say so. So I guess my next question is, what is your thoughts on like single issue voting then?
Oh, well, single issue voters or single issue coalitions are very important. I work within a lot of single issue coalitions where there are certainly non-libertarians that I work with. The most
Mm-hmm.
prominent, I would say, is the Stop Cop City movement in Atlanta that I've been working with. They're trying to build this giant police training facility. Speaking of, trees being torn down and not having good drainage, they're tearing down one of the largest green spaces in Atlanta to build this.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to create a floodplain for all the neighboring
Mm-hmm.
neighborhoods. It's going to put an outdoor shooting range within earshot of an elementary school. Not to mention that this facility is building an entire mock city block so they can learn how to lock us down door by door. Because, why would that ever be needed? Who
Mm-hmm.
knows? And so there's a lot of reasons to oppose
Climate
this.
change.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of reasons to
Foreshadowing.
oppose it. In fact, some of the people who are opposing this the most are actually environmentalists who see them tearing down the
Mm-hmm.
forest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it has created a broad coalition across the left and right spectrum of property owners, business owners, environmentalists, criminal justice reform advocates, generally just like the left. I walk into this room of organizing. I'm a libertarian. Everybody knows who I am, but most of that room is made up of leftists and socialists.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to be willing to walk in that room and say, hey, we're fighting the police state together. We don't have to agree on economics and taxation right now. Like, I recognize we won't. And if we sit here
Hmm.
and bitch at each other about this, we're never going to fight the police state together. So we have to ignore the areas where we disagree sometimes and fight for those single issue coalitions. We can find that across the spectrum. Immigration is another great one. Lots of Democrats care about immigrants and they want to see, a better immigration system. And even though they have terrible ideas on things like, public education or gun rights or a lot of other areas where I disagree with Democrats, I'm going to work
Hmm.
with them on fixing the immigration system and streamlining immigration. Similarly with Republicans and gun rights,
Hmm.
I'm going to fight to defend our Second Amendment. I will fight against any gun regulation, repeal the gun regulations that exist, oppose the false rhetoric about how, if we just banned rifles, we would cure all gun violence in the world. Like that just doesn't exist. I'll work with Republicans on that, even though they're really stupid on a lot of other issues, particularly the neocons with war and some other issues. But I'm going to work with them on that. So single issue coalition building is important. And as a candidate, I would encourage activists out there to cross those party lines, to work across party lines. Now, as a candidate for office, I have to put the libertarian message forward loud and clear and distinguish itself from those other parties. It's an important part of being a candidate is to distinguish ourselves clearly and set a clear line of where we're different from, say, Joe Biden or Donald Trump or any other candidate. But when it comes to that on the ground activism, yeah, you work with people you don't like every day to get things done. This is also what we do in our regular jobs. Like if you go to an office building, you probably don't like every person you work with, but you get the
Hmm.
expense report out to accounting because if you don't, you're going to get in trouble, even if you don't like the people
Hmm.
over at accounting. You know what I'm saying? And so that's just part of your life. Life ain't fair, kids. Like sometimes you're going to have to work with a-holes. It's just part of
Hmm.
getting through your life. You're going to work with people who are different than you. And if you can't do that, you're just going to have a really bad time. You're not going to have a lot of friends. You're not going to have a lot of great work experience because if you just cut it off to only people who agree with you and who act like you, you're going to be very lonely because the truth is every single person is different. There is no one who is exactly like you. And so if you're looking for that to exist, you're going to be lonely.
Yeah. And speaking of immigration, how do we go ahead and fix that issue? I mean, especially now that the same old political narrative has expanded with the southern border and what's going on, what's at this very moment. So, how do we go about that business of securing the border and while at the same time protecting private property? Because obviously, if you're going to secure it, you're going to have to commandeer some private property or use some of it too. So how do we go about the business to fix the issues of the southern border more
Yeah.
so than anything?
Yeah, well, what I want to see is an Ellis Island model of immigration. So what I want to see is us opening our ports of entry, basically saying, if you want to come here, come right through these ports of entry. You're going to have to declare who you are and give a quick background check, which we can do very quickly in the 21st century. It doesn't take a long
Hmm.
time like it would have 100 years ago.
Oh yeah.
And if you're not wanted for a crime that requires us to extradite you back to where you came from, then you should be able to come right in and get to work. It's the
Hmm.
stalling of this process, the fact that the processing takes weeks or months, and there's this huge backlog that creates this huge strain on the local communities at the border who are having to use local public assistance or churches and other
Hmm.
charities that are stretched thin. If we could process these people much more quickly, people would go to where the jobs are. Just in like the Dakotas right now for energy work, they're like paying through the teeth to get people to get there. They can't get enough people up there. Well, I bet you if you're somebody who's coming from Central America where there's desperation and no chance for any
Hmm.
prosperity, you might be willing to suffer through a winter in North Dakota for a chance to make, 80 grand a year working in the energy
Hmm.
sector. Go where the jobs
Oh yeah.
are. And so I think if we could clean up this process and streamline it where people could get, go through much more easily, it would end the dependency on welfare at the border that we're seeing from so
Hmm.
many people. It would also allow our law enforcement to greater focus on those who are still trying to go through a porous border or trying to get through not going through a port of entry, because those people, if you provide an easy
Hmm.
port of entry for all the peaceful people, well, who's going to be not trying to go through those ports of entry? People are trying to
Hmm.
smuggle people for the purposes of human trafficking or other things like that. Well, it's
Yeah.
easier for law enforcement to focus on that when we're letting that 99.9% of peaceful people come through. And then in Georgia, agriculture is the #1 industry in my state. And there are a lot of workers who are needed here in Georgia during planting and harvesting. Maybe they're not needed during the rest of the year. So why can't we make immigration easier for those people to come up here and work during the time that they're needed and then be able to easily go back, right back to their families with a lot of American dollars that can stretch a lot further back where they're at? If we had an open immigration system like this that still did check people out of the border to make sure they're not wanted for murder or wanted for something that's wrong or they're a criminal, we could see a much better free market of prosperity, free movement of people, and a lot more peace. Also, we need to do things like end the war on drugs that creates so much stability south of our border that has so many people fleeing north. In the process that we've done throughout my life of the CIA meddling itself in the affairs of some of these countries and destabilizing regimes that then creates further violence, making people flee north. Like, there's a lot of things our government could just stop doing that would have less immigrants coming up here. But what we need to do is ease the process for people who are coming. For people who are already here, we need to make it easier to become a citizen. And certainly for those who are under DACA, kids who came here when they were really young, they didn't have any control. Their parents brought them here, but this is the only country they've ever known. We should be making them citizens. Like, that should quickly be happening, and quit kind of keeping them legally kind of up in the air with where they're at. We should just go ahead and say, hey, man, you've been here since you were a child. America's the only country you've ever known. Like, why would we deport you to a country that you can't even remember? Let's just go ahead and make you a citizen.
And not only that, but they're already pretty much working. So, I mean, they're already productive. So why not?
Gone to school here,
Exactly.
Like they've already started businesses. So yeah, like let's leave them here, and that will actually make our border more secure without having to build giant walls and put up razor wire and all this stuff. Because it would ease the need for people to have to cross through those areas of the border. People would just come through a port of entry. Now, if you're a business, or if you're a property owner along the border, you should have every right to build a giant fence as much as you want. You can build a big old fence. You can put razor wire on it. I don't care. Like, that's your property. But I am tired of seeing property being stolen through eminent domain to build these walls. I was down at the border. I heard stories of people who were property owners along the border. They loved the fact they had a beautiful view of the vista of Mexico. And then the federal government took some of their land and built this giant wall. So now the view of their backyard is this ugly fence with razor wire on it. And they're like, this isn't why I bought the property. You've ruined what I loved about my land. And that shouldn't be happening.
No, it shouldn't. I mean, your property's your property, and nobody should be encroaching on it, whether it's a illegal immigrant or a federal agent or a federal contractor. So, I mean, it sounds really, the whole political narrative of this border crisis, really, it just sounds, what would you say, Andrew? Kind of kayfabe, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I like that term.
So, I mean, it really is kind of like it is, I don't know if it's a rib or a work, but it's definitely
It's job
we're
security.
big. It's definitely job security. We're big wrestling lingo guys right here. So everything goes back. So, but that's what it sounds like. It's basically just a storyline just to create votes for one side and try to get one side riled up, and it's just political chaos, like, at its very extreme, and it's just getting us nowhere.
I always say the two-party system is kayfabe.
Yeah.
It is a political wrestling match, and this does not mean to insult pro wrestlers, because God knows they're far more respectable than politicians, even some of the crazy ones out there. But two-party politics is kayfabe. It's not a real competition amongst Republicans and Democrats. They are simulating their match. They are getting the best spots in. They are working the crowd to get their energy up. And with this performance, they take your money and your vote for granted, and they distract you from what's really going on. So it is a work. That's what this is. You are a mark if you're voting in the two-party system. Like, that is, you're the exact mark they're looking for. And I think we need to wake people up to it. We need to examine. We need to be smart to this. And they call us the smart fans, the people who know what's really going on and who follow the business in the back. That's what we need to be more like. We need to be paying attention to really what's going on behind the scenes. Who's building this narrative? Who is building these matches? Like, why are they crafting this? Like, why is this storyline being done this way? It's the same with pro wrestling, same with politics. And I'm somebody who like maybe with let's use a 1990s reference, maybe with the WCW that is the Democrats, the WWF that is the Republicans. Maybe we need a little ECW. We need a little extreme to be jumping into the politics to wake people up and throw some real, what we'll usher in a little attitude supposedly, right? If we throw those ideas in, because that's exactly what happened, right? With I'm gonna use a wrestling analogy here. That's exactly what happened with the business in the 90s, right? You had WCW, which was like stale and boring and doing its stuff at MGM Studios and kind of, they were kind of cartoony at that point too. And then you had the WWF with like Doink the Clown and Duke the Dumpster Drozy, and everybody had a job, and like it was all employment gimmicks, and it just wasn't getting over. And then ECW was this like bubbling underground thing that brought realism. It was like the grunge rock to hair metal. Like it changed the industry. And who adapted that? Well, of course, you then saw the rise of the NWO from WCW. You saw the rise of the Attitude Era and DX from WWF. And because of what ECW did, they injected those ideas into the atmosphere, and those two major entities adopted them and became way more successful because of it. This is what could happen if you run a well-run libertarian message campaign that gets out there and puts the energy out there that people want to see. Because God willing, there's a lot of ways to win. Winning the White House is one way, building the party up, which is another thing I'm focused on, is another way. But another way that libertarians can win is when we present such an awesome package that wakes people up, that the Republicans and Democrats go, well, crap, maybe we should steal some of what they're doing. Maybe we should do what they're doing down up there in Philadelphia, right? Maybe we should do what they're doing and put it into our own product, and it'll interject new energy. Well, good. Steal our best ideas, Republicans and Democrats. Please do that. Please take the best ideas we have that get people excited and energized. Please take our anti-war views. Take our pro-immigration views. Please take our anti-tax views, or our pro-gun views, or our pro-choice in education views, or our pro-choice for your own body views, whatever it is. Take your own spin on it and use it. And if you do that, we don't even win at the ballot, but our ideas still win. And that's what happened with the anti-cannabis stuff. Like we've been fighting for legal weed since the 70s, and now it's happened in most of the country. You're in a state with legal weed, and it's growing each day. And we're going to break down other drug war barriers. It's what we did with regards to like gay rights and the ability for LGBTQ people to have equal access under the law of government, with regards to military service or marriage or adoption rights, these things. We were ahead of that in the 70s. We're ahead of the mainstream. We are the ECW of politics, and we need to embrace that, and that we are the upsetter. We are upsetting that apple cart, so that way the traditional, boring, stale politics can maybe get some attitude in it on down the line. You like that? See, I just threw a whole pro wrestling rant in there for y'all.
That's called cutting a promo, Andrew.
Yeah, right. Okay, that's it. I'm out.
It's
I'm
the end. So if with this being the case, does that make Ron Paul Paul Heyman?
Oh yeah, I might. Well, everybody says I'm a Paul Heyman guy. We say a lot we're a Ron Paul guy in this party. So he is kind of. It would be great if you could cut a promo. Ron come out there and be like, "My client Chase Oliver." That'd be great. I like to. I'm going to tell this. The two-party system will acknowledge me. And we
sounds like they should. They better.
Because if they don't, we got a whole bloodline of libertarians ready to come after them. No, I am very excited about the election coming up. But you're right. Now you guys have got me all excited for Wrestlemania in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, I'm very much both a pro wrestling fan. You guys got me there. You guys got me to cut a promo. Don't make me do the hard times promo. I'll do that one day at a libertarian. Go full Dusty Rhodes on people. But let me ask y'all a question, since we're talking pro wrestling. If you were to look up pro wrestling in the dictionary, who do you think would be the picture there? Who do you think identifies like quintessential? I have an answer, and I'll give you my answer after if you give yours. But if you were just look up pro wrestling in the dictionary, who do you think that is?
That's a good question. Andrew, what do you think?
Oh man, I got to go right there.
You want me to give you my answer?
Sure.
It's the Macho
Good right
Man
ahead.
Randy Savage. He
Yeah.
is the
That's pretty.
quintessential pro
Yeah.
wrestler. He's got the promo.
Hmm.
He's got the look.
He.
He's got the ability. He's got the flamboyancy. He was everything that was needed for pro wrestling. He is the most well-rounded
Hmm.
pro wrestler of all time, Macho Man Randy Savage. The only
Yeah.
other one I could think of that would come anywhere close to that would either be Ric Flair or Shawn Michaels. They're like the top. They're like 2A and 2B. But when it comes to like, if you were to say who is a pro wrestler, you need that gruffy voice. You need that
Hmm.
promo ability. You need that intensity. And he was kind of all that personified. So that's when I've had that asked of me before, and that is my answer is always Macho Man Randy Savage.
That's
Oh,
definitely a good,
you're forgetting Bret
good point.
Hart though.
Bret Hart is
He,
he is a wonderful technical worker. You're right.
yeah.
He's
Yeah.
maybe 2C, 2AB, 2C. Like, that's my
Yeah.
Mount Rushmore right there, probably
Hmm.
is those four that we just mentioned.
I don't know. I don't know. I'd still have to say Eric Bischoff though, because
Uh,
he made WCW what it was. If it wasn't for him, it would have collapsed. You wouldn't have had NWO. He kept them hanging on even when they were dying through the late '90s. I mean, probably should have just
he gives a
let them
great
just
TED
die.
talk. He does a great TED talk about how pro wrestling and politics are related. And he
Yeah.
Hmm.
starts the talk by going out there in front of the crowd and cutting a promo on them and getting them all pissed off at him. And he's like, I bet you guys all want to come up here and punch me in the face right now, don't you? And he goes, good. That's exactly what I wanted you to do. I manipulated
Hmm.
you. I'm a heel. And he
Hmm.
went through the whole thing. It was amazing. And his saying is controversy creates cash. Well,
Hmm.
I think the Libertarian Party, with a bold message that presents itself in a way that is very different from what the Republicans and Democrats have. Let's say we're going to create a little controversy, and hopefully that translates to either cash or the cash of politics, which is votes. So let's
Hmm.
hope our controversy creates votes this 2024 election. And I hope folks, if you've liked the conversation, you want to hear, if you want to keep hearing that message, I encourage you to join the Libertarian Party. Go to lp.org, become a member, help us grow our foundation because we need more members in the party. Because I don't know about you guys, but I've done work in the party and I felt burnt out from time to time. And I think if we had more members, more activists, more people engaged, we wouldn't feel that burnout so much. We could continue this marathon of fighting the state together. It's just, it's just like it's one more shield to fight against the state, to hold ourselves against them. And so if you're watching this, I encourage you to join the Libertarian Party at lp.org. And of course, selfishly, you can always join my campaign. I would love to have more of you. We have over 300 volunteers right now all over the country. We have donors in all 50 states. And so we're creating a real network for this campaign to push back against the two-party system. But of course, we could always use you guys or anybody else who's out there listening to join the campaign too. And you can do that by going to votechaseoliver.com and getting involved. But we will tear down the state. We will create that controversy, and we will, not the evil NWO, but we'll be the good NWO for this whole thing.
The BWO.
Kevin,
The
the
BWO, yes.
LWO, the Latino World Order.
Hey man, with our
Uh,
immigration policy, there's no saying we couldn't be.
we
Hmm.
we need more Eddie Guerreros.
God bless. See, there's another great
God,
name. See, you can put that
Yeah,
name in the
there you
dictionary
go.
right there.
exactly, exactly, or even Chavo too. There's another
And
one.
so, if you guys have seen, I have not seen it yet. I'm waiting for it to come out on streaming. The Iron Claw. Unfortunately, I was kind of busy running for president. Didn't get to go to the movie theater and see it. But Chavo, he trained all of the actors in that movie in wrestling. And he said by the end of it, if he had helped them run a match, Zac Efron and Aaron and whoever could have had a match in the ring. He's like, I got them trained up enough to where they
Huh.
could have had a match if I had helped them choreograph it and put it together. And so big props to him for having a second career outside of wrestling. He kind of aged out of
Hmm.
the business, but now he's a stunt coordinator and he does that for both the Iron Claw movie and then if you've ever seen Glow on Netflix, he was the guy who helped train all of the female wrestlers for that too. Him and Carlito, those were the two people who helped train those women up on how to look realistic doing what they're doing. Hell, that's cool. Like, I think it's great that he found
That's
another
yeah,
career too. Like, good on him. Good on Chavito for doing his thing.
yeah, that's cool. Although of course Carlito's back in the biz, so
Yeah, looking
yeah,
jacked. I don't know what's in the food in Puerto Rico, but it's definitely a little bit of steroids. I'm just saying.
little
Right.
bit, just a little bit. I mean,
Well,
you got to
let me
stay
ask you
fit with
something
the
real
young
quick.
generation.
Speaking of factions, are you a old school Libertarian Party or Mises Caucus Libertarian?
Oh, I'm a lone wolf. No, now here's the thing. I try not to run with caucus fights. As a candidate for president, I think it's
Mm,
just dumb for me to be commenting or trying to get involved in those things, even if I have personal feelings one way or another. I have to represent the entire party if I'm our nominee, and that's all
Okay.
factions.
yeah.
And I think it's just ridiculous and I don't even try to attack my fellow libertarian candidates running for president. We have a lot of good people on our slate. I think if you're
Hmm.
wasting and this is another saying that my grandfather gave me back in the day, if you waste your time tearing down other people, you leave no time to build yourself up. And so, like, I'm not going to focus myself on attacking other candidates. We have great candidates. Like, you guys mentioned you had Mike Termott on previously.
Mm.
Like, I have differences, slight, not a lot, but
Oh.
there's contrast to be made there. But if I did so in a negative
Hmm.
way and was like, Mike sucks, blah blah blah, like this, which he doesn't, he's a great guy. But
Yeah.
just using him for instance,
Hmm.
and he wins the nomination. Well, then all it takes is the mainstream media to go, Mike Termott has won the nomination, and here's all the crappy things Chase said about him. Well, why
Yeah.
is that helpful? That doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help the party. And so
Hmm.
while I am competing against other libertarians for the nomination, I'm trying to show that our messaging is the best, our campaign style is the best, that this is going to be the message that breaks through the best. But that you don't say that by taking down other people. You do that by building your own messaging up. And I hope
Hmm.
that people can see that that's the kind of campaign I want to run, both in the primary process. But once we get to the general election, it is not merely enough to say that Trump and Biden suck. Because if we do that, we're no better than they are. And let's be real, protest votes are going to be hard to come by with Robert Kennedy taking up that oxygen. We have to provide something for
Hmm.
people to vote for. We have to be a positive contrast to the Trumps and Bidens and even Kennedys of the world. And if we don't do that, we run the risk of losing votes. And so this is the kind of messaging style we need in a campaign, and that's the kind of thing I'm trying to run. And so
Hmm.
even as far as divisions within the party, I'm not endorsing anyone running in a party. So if you're running for chair or vice chair or at large or whatever, God bless you. Wish you the best of luck, whoever you are. And I trust that the
Hmm.
delegates are going to pick somebody great because I have to trust that the same people who are hopefully going to nominate me to be our standard bearer are going to do a
Hmm.
great job of picking a chair and a vice chair and all that stuff. And they're going to do a great job of clicking platform and bylaws and doing all these things. Good on them. And I wish them the best. But for me, I got to stay out of those factional wars, man, because at this point,
Hmm.
in this Monday night war, it doesn't matter whether you're rolling with DX or not, you're fighting WCW, right?
Hmm.
So we got to be one
Exactly.
organization in this. Uh, or else we're going to be staring up at the lights, and I don't want to be doing that.
Or Tuesday Night War before they took the NXT off of Tuesdays and moved it to Wednesday because
Oh
of
yeah,
AEW.
good times. And I will say this, I am a big fan of competition in the business.
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
the WWE's most stale times is when they had no real competition, post
Yep.
WCW. And now that AEW exists, I think you're seeing the best stuff ever coming out of the WWE in years because they've had real
Hmm.
competition against them for like the first time in decades. And I think that speaks to the power of the free market and why we don't want to have monopolies in this world, why we want to have multiple
Hmm.
choices for things, because when we do that, it breeds competition, which breeds efficiency, it
Yeah.
breeds better products. This is why centralized state planning is wrong, because if there's only one way to do things or one avenue to do it, there's no incentive to do it better or to innovate. And so this is why I support things like the free market. And we're seeing it playing out in the wrestling business to tie it all back
Hmm.
together. Use that same metaphor when you're talking about competition amongst services that government is currently providing as a monopoly. They could be doing that in a free market and having much better competition than they do right now. And so we need to unleash the marketplace, and we'll see that kind of growth. And hopefully, we'll see
Hmm.
some of the best things we've ever seen, just like we're seeing out of WWE these days.
Exactly. And it also helps with WWE that Vince isn't reigning supreme anymore or in charge of creative. I mean, that kind
I
of
think it's
helps too.
I think
goes
it's good
back
for
to
the world that
politics
Vince
or the
is not
market.
doing a lot of things these days. I think his days are probably numbered and being anything but a joke for the rest of his life because of the things that have come out about him. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's got to suck to be a member of his family these days.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be really stressful. I mean, I can only imagine how stressful it is for for Paul Levesque these days being involved in the company and who
Mm-hmm.
his wife and
Mm-hmm.
father-in-law are and just all that stuff. But I hope Vince gets his because if just half of the stuff that's come out is true, he's a
Mm-hmm.
piece of crap and you know it's shameful. And so I hope they move forward without him. And you know what we're seeing right now? Vince is out at TKO, The Rock is in, and now The Rock has put a whole lot of new energy into that company. And
That
you're
is good.
seeing him
Yeah.
carrying it on his back because and someone likened this earlier. It's like when Papa John Schnapp from Papa John's was caught saying some racist stuff, and he was
Mm-hmm.
shoved out of the company. And then who did they bring in to be their giant spokesperson? Literally giant because he's huge.
Yeah.
But their
Yeah.
spokesperson and a celebrity was Shaq. This is what they're doing with the WWE. They
Mm-hmm.
scooted Vince right out, and they brought The Rock in as a board member for TKO because now that's what people. The Rock will become the new face of WWE. Just like Vince McMahon was for the last 50
Mm-hmm.
years, The Rock is going to be the face of WWE for the next 20 years. He's going to be the
Mm-hmm.
face they put their back on because he's well trusted, he's loved, he's entertaining, and he's somebody that knows the business generationally. Like his grandparents were involved in the business, and so
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what we're seeing right now corporately from the WWE is they shooed Vince away and they were like, who's going to be our Shaq like Papa John's? The Rock,
Mm-hmm.
perfect, bring him in. And now The Rock is going to make billions of dollars doing this. He is brilliant for doing it. So just if it when you see this happening, now that you see this,
Mm.
you're never going to be able to unsee it.
So, and with Rock though, is he taking over the bloodline?
Oh man, I am looking forward to seeing how that happens because I do think WrestleMania 41 or SummerSlam this year, you're going to get Rock versus Roman.
That's what
Uh,
I'm thinking.
and I think if Roman wants to take some extended time off, they have The Rock win that match. If not, they have Roman conquer him and stay strong, even though he's no longer the champion. That's what I see is like Cody's
Mm-hmm.
gonna he'll be the champion, but to keep Roman strong, they're gonna have him go over The Rock at SummerSlam to keep that
Mm-hmm.
character strong and viable, so that he can either threaten Cody for the next WrestleMania or possibly jump over to Raw and become a foil for Seth Rollins and have a Shield
Mm-hmm.
on Shield kind of thing going on for the next WrestleMania. That's just my headcanon and what I kind of would see
Mm-hmm.
going on. But if it happens, WWE pay me some residuals because I
In the
That would
business,
be
we
that
call it
would be
foreshadowing.
classic. So it is. That would be classic though to see Shield versus Shield though. That would be. So
Mhm.
hopefully they do that. So and hopefully Cody gets to actually finish what he should have got last year.
Well, see, here's the thing. I think Cody wanted to extend it another year because if you really
Yeah.
look at the way his dad did things, Dusty was
Mm-hmm.
always most popular when he was chasing the championship. He was never really
Mm-hmm.
popular as a champion. Like he wasn't champion for very long either. He didn't have
No,
very
he
long
wasn't.
reigns. It was always chasing that championship and getting just close enough and then getting screwed over at the last minute that had the
Mm-hmm.
people just fighting for him so much so that by the time he did win the title, the pop was amazing. The pop is going to be so effing loud at WrestleMania
Mm-hmm.
40 when Cody wins that it's going to blow
Mm-hmm.
the roof off the joint. And like that's what they've been waiting for. They knew that they were going to get a big pop if they didn't last year, but by waiting a further year and allowing it to
It,
bubble and brew, not only do they give Roman that extra legitimacy of holding the title for as long as he has, but now they're about to just have him just be overcome by Cody, and it's going to be like the knight slaying the dragon, and everyone's going to cheer. They'll be throwing,
mm-hmm.
what was it? Trim Cornette says they'll be throwing their babies in the air by the end of this thing. Like,
Yep.
it's, and so, I'm looking forward to that happening. And it's really good long-term storytelling that is, frankly, for many of the years when WWE didn't
Mm-hmm.
have competition, they were missing that long-term storytelling. They let this bubble and brew. And it's one of the things that AEW does not do well enough. They don't do long-term storytelling well enough. And I think this is where you're seeing that kind of contrast now. I love
Mm-hmm.
that we've been talking about WWE and AEW, by the way. This has been the most interesting podcast because I haven't just only been talking politics. So I've been very much enjoying
Yeah.
it.
Well, thank you for that. Well, we try to be a little different. So, but the big pop, I mean, and hopefully we can see a big pop down the line in November maybe. So, even if it's for the messaging.
Oh yeah, well
So
I gotta win the political Royal Rumble that is the Libertarian nomination first. But once I do, I will carry that on my back and go into November fighting to take down the two-party system. And I hope anybody who is listening can join me on the journey.
is it a Royal Rumble or is it an Elimination Chamber?
Ooh, yeah,
I
maybe
don't
it's a
know.
chamber match. There is like 6 or 7 of us, so like, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's get me and Jacob Hornberger and Joshua Smith and Mike Tremont and some of the others. We'll just put us all in a pod. We'll draw straws. I mean, honestly, this is actually a more fun way of us picking a nominee. Like, I think I can win
Hmm.
this one, honestly. Like, especially if I get like a
Let's
later
do it.
draw. I mean, this could be on Michael's 2002 kind of situation.
Right.
Uh,
Hmm.
I just have to get a page boy haircut and brown tights. No, that would actually be kind of cool. Maybe we need to throw this to the convention oversight committee and have them field out how much an elimination chamber would cost for us to build, and if we can fit one in a
Right.
hotel ballroom.
Yeah. I can imagine just
I'd watch.
buy a pretty penny.
It would raise a lot of money, I'm telling you.
Yeah, it definitely would. All that ticket revenue.
Me, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, TLC match. Let's make it
Yeah.
happen.
TLC. Oh, now it's a dream come true. I just want
Yeah.
to see someone get speared off the belt, hanging from the belt.
And man, if Joe
Like,
Biden can get hanging from the belt, I'll spear him. Okay, I promise.
That's not.
uh, I don't know if Joe would be able to remember that though.
Yeah,
He's a
well,
Control
little
for
frail.
context. Control for context.
well, I really appreciate you guys giving me an opportunity to kind of hang out and speak with y'all for a little while, and don't be strangers. Once I win the nomination, I want to come back on here again, and it'll be closer to SummerSlam. So, like, let's talk politics and wrestling again in the future as we get a little closer to the next big show,
Mhm.
and hopefully, I'll be running for president somewhere, and we can tie those two things together. We can tie some SummerSlam
Mm.
storylines to what we're doing on the road fighting for liberty.
That sounds good. We definitely want you back. So it's been a good conversation. So, but yeah, that sounds like a good time to close out. So any last minute questions, concerns, issues you have for Chase there, Andrew?
Wow, no. Let's just keep going and hopefully he gets the spot.
Thank you so much.
Uh,
Well, I will do the last minute plug. I already plugged my website, votechaseoliver.com.
mhm.
But if you want to follow me on social media, folks, go to @ChaseForLiberty and make sure to follow these folks in their show as well. We're going to definitely be sharing it on my social media. So if you're watching this on my social media, give these guys a follow too. And make sure you follow the Legacy Right and keep checking out future episodes because hopefully I'll be back.
So, well, thank you again, Chase, for that plug. I mean, I don't know, man. He knows how to cut a promo. I think he has
Right.
my vote just for that. So,
Right.
and I don't even vote. So he just earned a vote.
Rock
So,
on, man.
but thank you again, Mr. Chase Oliver. Good luck for the remainder of the primary season, and maybe November you'll be the one that's topping down Joe or Don, old Donnie J. But that's Andrew Joseph. I am the legacy of Jennifer Ent Kaiser, Zachary Kaiser. That's Lysander Spooner, Legacy Right, and let's go on out with
Thanks
another
for
great
watching.
promo. Peace.
Peace, love, and liberty.
See you later. Thanks for
Uh,
watching.